archaeologists, or architects, or art historians, we learn a lot by looking at objects. For example, if we want to know how an object was made, we look at the little traces left by the tools. For this reason, it's really important to be able to look at the objects, to have access to them in person. But there's not so many objects on display in a wonderful museum such as the RMO. For example, of their wonderful collection, only about 5% is on permanent display, the rest is in the archives. And if we want to compare objects in different locations or different countries, this becomes even more difficult because you can't have the two objects next to each other. For this reason, one of the most important things we do as archaeologists is to document objects. Now, I work for the German Archaeological Institute, and we have a very long history of documenting objects since we've been in existence since 1832. And if I compare our documentation for excavations, for example, in Olympia in Greece from 1870 to what we do today, you can really see the impact that revolutions in technology has had on how we look at objects and how we document them. And this has not only helped us to do it better and quicker, but it has also opened up new worlds for us to explore as scientists. We are able to ask new questions of the material that we couldn't even consider 30 years ago because we just didn't have the methods. So to explain how advances in technology have revolutionized how we do our work, we have now relocated to the laboratories here at Leiden University's Archaeology faculty. As you can see, this is a wonderful laboratory with all the instruments you might possibly need. The problem though is, what do you do if your laboratory is in one country and your material is in another country? It's really difficult to be able to import material from places like Greece or Italy. And for example, if you want to study material under a microscope, you need a small sample to be able to put it underneath here, and museums don't quite like it when you break pieces off. So, as we know, technology is rapidly advancing, and recently they have brought out a tiny little microscope like this one. And this allows us to take our laboratories with us to the field. We can just put it in our suitcase. One of the ways we can use the handheld digital microscope, for example, is to look at the fabric of objects like pots or roof tiles that are made using clay. The reason is different workshops or workmen working in different countries or time periods have their own clay recipe. So if we have a really close-up look at the fabric, we can see the bits and pieces, the mineral and the crystal components, and identify clay fabrics. So what we do is we just use the digital microscope, and we can see the view right here on the computer screen. Currently I have it set up at about 100 times magnification. And the wonderful thing is, as soon as we have an interesting view that we want to document, we just take a photograph. The reason why this is fantastic is because previously we were only able to compare fabric by eye. So if you had to have the two objects next to each other. But now we can continue studying the material even if we're no longer in the field and have access to the objects directly, because we have these wonderful photographs to work with. So one of those really traditional archaeological objects we spend a lot of time documenting is pottery. Normally we don't have complete vessels like this reproduction. Normally we only have fragments of pots, but it's really important to be able to document the overall form. We're really interested in knowing what the profile looks like and details such as the rim or handles. And normally we make these drawings by hand, which can take a lot of time and sometimes they're not so accurate. Recently they've developed a wonderful new tool called the laser-aided profiler. When it comes to technology, archaeologists are normally secondary users. Technology like 3D scanners or the microscope gets developed for other types of industries, such as car manufacturers. And then archaeologists come and say, oh, that's a useful tool, let's use it. So the laser-aided profiler was developed by archaeologists for archaeologists, specifically to document ceramics. The way it works, it makes use of lasers that create sort of a laser field. And then when you put the object within that laser field where it intersects, it draws a red line over the object that can be seen by the black and white camera. The program has been calibrated so it can take a profile based on the line seen by the camera instantaneously. This way we get an accurate profile within seconds. And then using the program, we can turn that into a standard ceramic drawing that shows the elevation and other details such as handles and so forth. Now, the laser-aided profiler was developed for ceramics, which is a small one, but recently they designed the extra large version that we can use for bigger objects like amphoras or roof terracottas.
I would like to end with one final example of how the digital realm has revolutionized archaeology, specifically the three-dimensional realm. There are different options for creating 3D models, from photogrammetry to different types of scanning instruments, such as this handheld 3D scanner being used in Olympia. The 3D model is a big improvement compared to traditional handmade drawings. A scale drawing can easily take a skilled draft person a day or more, while the scanner only requires about 30 minutes. Not only is there an improvement in time, but the scanner is also able to capture a lot more information. The object is recorded in 360 degrees, while drawings mostly show only the front view. And the model captures a lot of other information, such as the surface texture and tool marks left during the production process. In a certain sense, it's almost like having access to the original object, which is really fantastic. It allows us to return to the object at any time for further study. The 3D scans also make it possible to compare objects to each other, especially in cases where the objects are not physically in the same location. Here you can see two SEMA fragments which are thought to come from the same building in Olympia, but one is in the Antike Sammlung in Berlin and the other in the Archaeological Museum in Olympia. By overlaying the two models, we can calculate how much they differ from each other. The distance between each mesh node is shown as a color, with green being the smallest. This helps us to understand the production process, such as the use of molds or which parts were formed by hand. There are a number of examples of objects made from the same mold, and which were then later found in different locations. We know that workshops could travel between building sites, or in later periods we know of large-scale production centers that produced tiles for export. New technology makes it possible to bring together objects which might be physically apart and to study them together in the digital realm. This opens up new avenues for investigation, including patterns of distribution and production traditions related to different periods or regions. There has been many revolutions in how we study the ancient world. In this segment, we have taken just a brief look at one of these, namely the changes brought about by new technology.